Alrighty. Well, thank you again for being with us, and thank you especially to all mothers everywhere of all time, of all places, and we are grateful to God for this office of motherhood that exists in our human experience, that serves as a guidepost to us, that serves to point the way to this idea of unconditional love, this love of devotion. Now, I realize every year when we speak of this that it brings up some bittersweet memories. It brings up some very sad memories for some of us. You know, some of us, our moms have already passed on, and we miss them. And Mother's Day brings up those memories of the fact that they're gone. And in that regard, what we must do is, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the talk, but we must come to realize that there is no such thing as death. There is only change. There is only transformation. When the caterpillar crawls in the cocoon, you could say the caterpillar is marching to its death. But it's just moving to the next stage of being. And those who have gone before us are living in the next stage of beingness. They are part of that which was never born, that which shall never die, and that which still loves us. So we bless all our moms who have passed. For some of us, we may not have even known our mom. She may have died before we were able to know her, or perhaps we never knew her at all. Perhaps we were adopted. And we wonder what would that have been like? What did we miss out on? For some of us, our moms were not capable of giving us the love that we felt we should get from a mother. You know, they may have been caught up in their own struggles, their own addictions, their own search for identity. And perhaps we were born to them before they realized their own spiritual nature and what they had to give. And in both of those circumstances, what we need to do is realize that whatever love we felt we missed out on, we can still have, we can still experience. Not through that individual, not in that exact specific circumstance, but the love that motherhood represents to us. Keep that in mind. It is a symbol. It represents something to us. That unconditional love, that love of devotion, that idea of somebody who is just crazy in love with us. We can experience that. We can still experience that if we open our hearts to it, and if we remove the limitations that says it can only come in a certain way. Because the love that we are talking about is God's love. And it is not limited to just one channel at one time and at one place. See, this is what the symbol of motherhood represents to us. So today we are talking about ordinary love versus divine love. And I believe that this ideal motherhood, this ideal symbol of motherhood that we contain in our consciousness is really a symbol of divine love. And if you think about different religions, you know, in the Catholic Church we had the symbol of the Blessed Virgin, the mother of Jesus. And this was a symbol of divine love, a symbol of divine motherhood. And we were encouraged to contemplate that, to think about that, to meditate upon that. And the symbol of Mary with baby Jesus sitting on her lap, the Madonna, the painting, is well known. And it predates Christianity. Because in the Egyptian religions, there was Isis, and she was the Madonna, and she was the mother. And we have the exact same symbolism there. And some of the earliest religious artifacts that archaeologists have found are the tiny stone carvings of a pregnant woman. Some of the earliest religious artifact, and it's a religious artifact, because in this office of motherhood, see, this symbol of motherhood is the experience of God's unconditional love. So as we go through this talk today, and I talk about divine love, try to find a symbol in your mind. Try to find something in your mind that you can touch, that isn't too abstract. Divine love is an abstract term, and of course divine love is in fact abstract. It's ineffable. It goes beyond what the mind is capable of grasping. But sometimes we need little stepstones. We need something tangible that we can put in front of us, knowing that it points to something else, knowing that there's something beyond. I know I mentioned to you that one time Lori and I had an opportunity to take some classes with a professor of Hindu studies who taught at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and these classes were taught out at the Hindu temple near the airport in Morrisville, North Carolina. And I was kind of intrigued, I guess, when we went into this temple. I had been in many different churches in my life. I had never been into a Hindu temple. And there was one wall, and along that wall was all of these different plaster statues of the different gods. And if you see the picture of the Hindu gods, they look strange to us, like the head of an elephant or a creature with 6 arms and things like that. Of course, all of that is symbolism. But nevertheless, it looks strange to. I was used to seeing statues of Mary and Joseph and Jesus and Saint Anthony and things like that, stained glass windows. But nothing like this. This seemed totally different to me. And there was a bell that was hanging from the ceiling, and it had a cord hanging down from it. And there was a mat there. And people would come in, and of course you leave your shoes at the door, and people would come in, and they would stand on that mat, and they would reach up and they would ring that bell, and it was a bang-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and it would just, if you weren't paying attention when they came in, we were studying in our class, it would just jolt you. And then they would kind of bow down a little bit, maybe kneel on the mat, and then go over to one of the particular statues and light incense or things like that. Like in a Catholic church, we would go light a candle, and they would pray there. And I was reading about the symbolism of these various gods in the Hindu religion, and the author said, for people who need to believe that the plaster statue is God, that's where they are, and that gives them something to hold on to. For people who realize that the plaster statue is only a symbol of the God, well, that too gives them something to hold on to, but they're holding on to whatever their concept of that God is. And then other people will recognize that, well, it's not the God, but it is the qualities that the God represents. Perhaps the God represents peace or protection or abundance, or all these different things, as we find in more Western religions. Saints have specialized areas. One you go to if things are lost, and another you go to if things are hopeless. That same kind of a concept. So some people come to recognize that the God itself is not really a God, but the God itself is only a symbol of something beyond it. And then still others will recognize that all of these things are just pointing to the ineffable, the unknowable. So in that tradition, it was okay. It was okay to find a symbol that we could latch onto at whatever level of progress the soul was at. And I just invite you to think about that today, because we're talking about divine love, which is an intangible. We're talking about divine love that is ineffable. And many of us need some kind of a symbol, something that we can kind of wrap our mind around, but wrap our mind around it in a way that lets us know that this is only a way pointer. Okay, this is not the be all end all. That this is a way pointer to the unconditional love of God. So we've been talking for the last several weeks really about transforming, transcending, moving beyond. We start with the premise that the goodness, the love, the joy, the guidance, the peace, the presence of God itself is right here where we are. Omnipresence, omnipresence. And not just some of God is here, but all of God is here. You know. That which we are seeking is here. That which we are seeking has caused us to seek it. As Meister Eckhart says, God is like the child who clears its throat while playing hide and seek, so we will come and find it. The poet says that the divine is laying in quiet repose, just awaiting our discovery. It's here, I'm here, come find me, come love me. And there's something within us that knows that. There's something within us that pulls us forward. There's something within us that compels us to seek that. I think it was Augustine who said we could not even pray if God had not placed the desire to pray within our hearts. That which we are seeking has caused us to seek. But as Dr. Holmes tells us, we put God too far away and we make God too hard to find. We come up with rules and regulations to follow. We come up with years and years of things to study, you know. We come up with all of these what may seem to be difficult practices of mind. And in many cases what it serves is the purpose of reinforcing our society's preconceived notion that anything of value must be difficult, and God is the ultimate value, so we have to make God the hardest to find. And that is a concept of the intellect. That is a concept of the intellect. So we are looking for the gem in the pond of water, and we are splashing our hand about, we are splashing our monkey mind about, we are splashing our emotions about, and we can't see that which is right in front of us. So for the first 2 weeks we talked about transcending the intellect, and the reason for that is there's two major orientations or two major worldviews that we must consider, and one is thinking and the other is feeling. And the majority of our society is in thinking. And even if we are in a feeling mode in our society, which is where I am, we have to flog ourselves to get into the thinking mode at times in order to do the things that need to be done according to our role or our position, to get up and go to work, those sorts of things. So today we're going to talk about the feeling orientation. We talked about how to transcend the intellect. Don't try to fix the intellect. Don't try to analyze the intellect. Don't even believe the intellect, because the intellect is only a tool that was designed to take us this far, and now we have to leave it. And Buddhism gives us the example of the raft. We take the raft across the river, and when we get to the other side, we have to leave the raft behind. It's of no use. We walk the razor's edge. We use the intellect to get us to the point where the intellect no longer is required, and we have to leave it. We have to leave it behind. It's as silly as trying to carry a raft with you wherever you go once you've reached the other shore. We have to recognize that there is a consciousness that precedes the intellect, and that's where we want to be. And we talked about some specific techniques on how to do that. Now, the other orientation is the orientation of love, the orientation of the heart, the orientation of feeling. And we must understand that neither orientation is superior to the other. You know, it's not like you can say, oh, you thinking people are all this, and oh, you touchy-feely people are all that. It's not one or the other. It's just two different roads that are going up the same mountain. When we get to the top of the mountain, it does not matter how we got there. But one of the things that helps to transcend, or at least interfere with, maybe that's a better way of saying it, is this idea, this human idea of love, which of course we're going to go from the human idea to the divine idea. But you know, human beings talk about we're falling in love. Oh my God, I'm falling in love. Well, where are we falling from? And where are we falling to? What do we mean we're falling in love? And typically what we mean, even if, you know, sometimes it's hard for us to explain, we're falling out of our heads, right? We're coming out of our heads and we're falling into our hearts. We're starting to feel. We're starting to feel. We're not thinking and analyzing so much. We're starting to feel. See, love is not logical. Love is totally illogical when you think about it. And behavioral scientists, you know, have gone down to say, you know, there's really no such thing as love. Love is just an illusion. Love is an illusion that the mind creates. You can't prove that love is there scientifically. You can't weigh it. You can't feel it. You can't touch it. You know, it's just a shared illusion that we have all created together. And yet even the scientists who know that intellectually, they'll fall in love. They'll fall in love. See, love is not a logical operation. It can't be a logical operation. God is not a logical operation. So we talk about this concept of falling in love. And what happens to us when we fall in love, some things start to happen that we want to consider, because we want to try to think, when we move from ordinary love to divine love, that some of these same characteristics go with us, and some of these characteristics of ordinary love stay behind. So we fall in love and thinking stops, you know. When we're in love, you know, the intellect stops. Something else takes over that doesn't even make sense to us, you know. People who don't even speak the same language fall in love. Short people fall in love with tall people. Tall people fall in love with short people. You know, people of all kinds fall in love with one another. People fall in love and they develop their own way of communicating with one another, sort of a baby talk way of communicating, because language fails us, you see. This experience of love fails, makes the intellect fail. The intellect can't go there with you. You know, it just can't. You know, it's like trying to stay dry and be in the lake at the same time. You can't do it. You can't do it. You know, we have an example in our recent history. You know, the King of England gave up his throne to go and to be in love, to be in love. So love is not a logical operation. Love is something that takes us out of time and space. You know, when we're with our beloved, it's just, we're just there. You know, I get a kick out of the movies, and some of the comedies actually poke fun at it. But you know, they'll have people fall in love, and then they show you all of these things that these people were doing together. You know, going to the movies, going to dinner, and they're doing all these things, and all of these things take place like in a day, you know. 2 weeks worth of activities, they take place in 24 hours. Time disappears. Time is gone. Nothing seems to matter but being with our beloved, see. And this is why love is a powerful experience that helps us to transcend the intellect. But we have to make sure that we understand the difference between ordinary love, which is even the kind of love I'm talking about right there, that most of us, you know, understand or experience or have witnessed, and divine love. Because divine love, you know, it's like emerald, bam, we take it up a notch, take it up a notch. Because here's the fundamental issue that I think we need to address. And that is, we are all here, and we don't know how we got here. As the Buddhists would say, the game was in progress when we started playing. You know, can you imagine that one day? You just wake up one day and you're all dressed in a uniform for whatever sport it happens to be, and you're sitting on the bench, and everybody is playing, and you're not sure what's going on, and the coach points to you and says, "Get in there." And you're going, "Oh my God, what do I do? I don't even know the name of this game. I don't even know the rules, you know." And that's how we arrive in life. You know, that's how it seems like we arrive in life. Where we were before we got here, most of us don't remember. Where we go when we leave here, most of us don't know. But we know that we are temporary. That's the key. We know that we are impermanent in our physical bodies. We know that we are impermanent. Now, the intellect is a way of organizing thought and ideas and opinions and those sorts of things. And the intellect creates the ego, and the ego is nothing more than the intellect's idea of who and what we are. That's all it is. A set of opinions. If you understand that who you think you are is only an opinion, life becomes a lot easier and also a lot more confusing, because suddenly you realize you don't know anything. And that's okay. That's okay, because the intellect is going to be transcended, right? Evolution brought us this far. Spiritual awareness and spiritual practice has to take us the rest of the way. We have to be willing to let go of that. But the intellect is aware of death. The intellect is aware that people around us are dying. Now, as we start off in life, as we're very young, we think, well, that only happens to other people. That only happens to, if you're religious, that only happens to bad people who deserve it, you know. That only happens to sick people. That only happens to old people. But as we go through life, as we get older and older, as we go through life, you know, it happens to everyone. See, this was the whack on the side of the head that got the Buddha moving. He was raised in an environment where his father tried to protect him from all of the unpleasantness of life, the sickness and the death and the suffering. Raised him as a little prince inside the walls of the castle. And see, that's each and every one of us, right? Our parents want to protect us from life, and you can't protect your children from life. You have to teach them. You have to teach them how to live. And the Buddha got outside the walls of the castle, and for the first time ever, he saw a dead body. And it shocked him, and he asked his driver, and he says to his driver, "What is that? What happened to that person?" And the driver said, "Well, he's dead." And the Buddha says, "Well, dead? What is dead? What does that mean?" And he said, "Look at him. He's dead. He can't move. He's dead. His body doesn't work anymore. And it's going to rot, and I have to bury him or burn him." And the Buddha said, "Is that going to happen to me?" And the driver said, "It happens to everybody." And the Buddha wanted to solve this. Why is it the great problem of evil we talk about in theology? Why is there sickness and why is there death? And it led him to the awakening. There is no such thing as death. There's only transformation. But the intellect knows, the intellect is aware, and the intellect tries to pretend that this is never going to happen to us, only to other people, never to us. So when the intellect is busy working, it tries to distract us from this fundamental question of life, and it tries to give us other things to think about and other things to worry about. And if that doesn't work, then it gives us things to become angry with and to fight. The ego gets involved and starts to want to argue and fight, you know. And this is what goes on in the news. This is what goes on TV. This is all a distraction of the mind, of the intellect, trying to keep us from grappling with the fundamental question of life. And love serves a similar purpose. Love at the human level serves a similar purpose. See, we have this shared illusion, as Osho tells us. We have this shared illusion that if I'm with you and you're with me and we're in love, then time stops and the world stops and nothing matters but the fact that we are together and we are in love. We create this illusion that my life matters, my life is important, my life has meaning because somebody else needs me. If we take a stark look at life, if we are just a cold materialist and we take a stark look at life, life doesn't need any one of us. Life doesn't care about any one of us. We can be here one day and gone the next, and nature doesn't care. The sun still shines, the tide still comes in, you know. The birds and the fishes, they still migrate. So there's this kind of emptiness. There's this kind of void. It's like the hole in your tooth that you can't keep your tongue from flicking into until you get into the dentist. There's this abyss. There's this abyss that we don't want to go into. We don't want our mind to go there. And human love also keeps us from going there. Human love at the first level of love, levels 1, 2, and 3, human love is a transaction. It is a transaction by which two people come together and they help each other to avoid the growth that is necessary to transcend and transform. The Buddha had to go and do some serious work before he got to enlightenment, before he had his spiritual awakening. So listen to love songs. Listen to the love songs on the radio, and they are perfect examples of this needy, transactional love. I can't live if living is without you. Last week I had the Seekers from Australia stuck in my head, and they had a big hit, A World of Our Own. You know, we'll get together. We'll build a world of our own. And then they had another one, I Know I'll Never Find Another You. There's a new world somewhere they call the Promised Land. And love songs are like that. They're about this falling in love, falling out of the head, falling away from the obvious spiritual question that we must eventually wrestle with. And creating this shared illusion that as long as we're together, as long as we need each other, as long as my life has meaning because you give it to me, then everything is okay and we can just ignore all the rest. So this is transactional love. This is two people coming together as ego and intellect, right? And I gave you the symbol, you know, it comes together like a square. You know, each person brings two sides to the square. We bring our ego, we bring our intellect, we come together. And even though it is a human experience of love, there are certain transformational qualities in that experience. There are certain things that help us to grow, and it is good for us and it is necessary for us. So a biologist might say, well, that love is nothing more than an illusion created by your hormones, and it brings you together for the sole purpose of producing the next generation, and that's all life really needs out of you. The salmon swims upstream, it spawns, it dies, it fertilizes the grass for the next generation. That's all biology requires of it. But love is more than that. Our lives are more than just a biological urge. See, love is starting to transform us. So even though we may come together in what the human intellect, what the human mind understands to be a dance of illusion, understands to be a dance that gives us a feeling of meaning, even if we haven't found a real meaning in our lives. It gives us a feeling of meaning. There's something beyond that. So we come together as the square. We come together as the ego and the intellect. And we are two unique individuals who have come together, and we are helping each other to the best of our ability. At that level of consciousness, we are helping each other to the best of our ability to do two things. Number one is to function in the world in this game that was being played when we got here, and we don't understand the rules yet. And number two, even though we don't quite understand everything that is going on, to grow deeper in love and to allow that love to transform us, to transcend us. Emmett Fox tells us that the only thing that changes human consciousness is prayer or treatment. Dr. Holmes tells us that the only way that we can do our treatment and get a demonstration is to have a greater awareness and experience of God. Right? So those two things seem to go together. And Joel Goldsmith tells us that the only thing that transforms human consciousness is the divine contact, coming into actual conscious awareness of the presence of God within, and in his teaching through meditation. And all are saying the same thing. See, all are saying the same thing. When we go into our treatment, we are bringing ourselves into conscious awareness of the presence and the activity of God. When we go into meditation for no purpose other than to experience the presence of God, we are bringing our consciousness into a receptive place that says, Lord, I am here. God, I am here. Reveal yourself to me. Your servant is listening. That sort of thing. And when we experience love, when we experience the true love, the glimpses of true love, you see, we are experiencing the presence of God because God is perfect love. Love is the experience of unity. It is the experience of oneness. God has created everything out of itself. God is already one with everything. God already loves everything. God loves us because we are part of it. We are part of it. God loves me by means of you. God loves you by means of me. And when you come together with your beloved, whoever your beloved is, it might be your spouse, it might be your mother, it might be somebody else, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about love. Talking about the experience of oneness, the experience of unity. When our soul is touched with that experience of love, our consciousness is transformed. And this is why in Hindu teachings we have the yoga of love. Right? 3 paths to God: the path of service, the path of knowledge, and the path of love. And what we're told is if you follow each path to the end, you find out that there was only ever one path that just looked like 3. So the path of knowledge is for the thinking type, and the path of love is for the feeling type, and the path of service is where we wind up when we explore the other 2. Because it's only natural, if I love you, that I am here for you. I am of service to you. So the second stage of love is the triangle, right? And in the triangle, what happens is 2 sides of the square kind of collapse and they make a point. So we have these 2 individuals who have come together. They are individual ego. They are individual intellect. They have come together in a transactional relationship. Maybe they've come together for financial good. Maybe they have come together for comfort, for protection, for company, for all these different human needs that people come together and why they think, they're in love. But because they have opened themselves up to love, every once in a while there is a glimpse, there is a touch of that divine love, the true love that breaks through that relationship, where the ego and the intellect kind of break down, where the 2 individual identities break down, and where for a moment, perhaps just a moment, the incredible love of God is felt, and it is present. The mind has stopped, right? The worries have stopped. The ideas of what I need have stopped. The ideas of I love you have stopped. There's no more thinking about love. There is just love. And it is that moment of love, it is that flash of love, that experience of joy and bliss, that cosmic love that moves our heart, that moves our heart. Now, as I said earlier, we all have this key issue of this fear of death. It is natural. And as long as we have that fear of death, our intellectual, our egotistical, and our love relationships are affected by that. And if we are to move from the experience of human love, ordinary love, into divine love, we must overcome that. We must transcend that. And that's what happens in that brief flash, in that brief moment where the love of God touches us. At that moment, we are eternal. We are eternal. See, Osho tells us love is not an act. Love is not an act. Right? It's not something that you do. And in ordinary love, it is. In ordinary love, we think love is something that you do. You love me, so you take care of me. You love me, so you do this for me. You love me, so you do that for me. You know, I love you, so I do this for you, and those kind of things. And again, that's transactional. But love is not an act. Love is not something that you do. I can't do love. You can't do love. Love is a state of being. Love is an attitude. Buddha didn't do love. Jesus didn't do love. They were love. See, they were love. They were the very epitome of love. Their love was not conditional. Love your enemies. Love everyone. Love. Love is the experience of the presence of God. So if we wish to become a divine lover, if we wish to move out of ordinary love to divine love, at some point along the way, we have to stop trying to do love. We have to stop thinking about love. And we must become love. And one of the ways that we do that is to overcome the thing that distracts us, this idea of death. And we do that by sitting and realizing our oneness with all life. See, our human idea of love is conditional. I love you because you're family. I love you because you're friends. I love you because you vote the same way I do. Divine love knows none of that. God sends the rain to the just and the unjust alike. So as we become more and more aware and we become more and more attuned through our spiritual practice, through our meditation, through our spiritual mind treatment, as we deliberately bring our, Dr. Holmes told us, persistently and painstakingly, we bring ourselves into the conscious awareness of the presence of God, we start to realize our unity with all things, our oneness with all things. You know, I can go out to the garden, if I had a garden. I could go out to the garden and I could pull a tomato off the vine and I could eat that tomato. And my body would know exactly what to do. My body would take from that tomato everything it needed, and it would get rid of the rest. How can that be? How can that be if my body and the tomato are not already one? There is a unity to all life. Right now we think that we are our body. That's the way we have been raised. That's the society that we are in. And as we start to grow in love, we realize that we are not the body, but we are the witness to the body. Joel Goldsmith wrote that he struggled for years with trying to get past this idea of death and trying to, move beyond it. And he went for a haircut one day, and he was driving home, and he said, "Now, do you have any concerns about the hair you left on the barbershop floor?" He said, "No. I said, I'm not the hair that's on the barbershop floor. You're not your body. You are not your body." So we start to realize, first of all, there's an incredible unity of all life, that God's life is in, as, and through everything, and that we are not our body, but we are the energy of God's love that is experiencing the world through this body. And when we come to a place of just recognizing that love being the experience of the unity of oneness, we realize we are one with that which is never born and that which shall never die. And there's nothing to fear, and there's nothing to be preoccupied about. So now I can come to you. I can come to my beloved in a totally different level of love, rather than coming to you to kind of create this shared illusion that we create a world of our own and we block out all the troubles and everything is wonderful. Now I come to you in a spirit of, you are the very presence of God who has come into my life, and I am the very presence of God that has come into your life, and we have come together not to create a shared illusion, not to just give each other comfort and safety. Of course, all those things go with it. But we have come together to help each other awaken. We have come together to help each other awaken to the spiritual magnificence that is within. Now my love is starting to approach divine love. I love you not because of what you look like. I love you not because of how much money you have. I love you not because of the way that I feel with you, that I feel like I'm important and life matters. I love you because you are the very essence of God's love right here in front of me. You are the symbol. You are the symbol of that love made visible in my life. And my love then turns from a transactional or a transitional love to a transformational love, a love of devotion. A love of devotion. Osho gives us a story of a Hindu saint. And the Hindu saint, the object of his devotion was, I believe, the goddess Kali, the mother Kali. And remember, all of these things are symbols, right? These are not actual, this person is a goddess. This is a symbol. The goddess Kali represents certain qualities of God. And this particular saint made the goddess Kali his object of devotion. And the priests in the community were so inspired by his dedication that they decided to make him a caretaker of the temple. But people would come and they would leave their offerings to the goddess Kali. They would leave a flower, and this man would pick up the flower and smell it to make sure that it was of a good smell. And if he was satisfied, then he would take it and he would lay it at the feet of the statue of the goddess Kali. And the priest went to him and he says, "You can't do that. A flower that has been smelt is no longer worthy of an offering. You can't do that." And he said, how could I possibly bring a gift to my goddess if I wasn't satisfied that it was worthy of her? And people would bring food, a food offering to the goddess, and he would taste the food. And then he would bring the food and he would put it at the feet of the statue. And the priest would say to him, "You can't do that. You can't offer food that has been eaten to the goddess. That's a sacrilege. You can't do that." And he said, "How could I not? How could I give food to my goddess, to that to whom I am devoted? How can I give my food to her without making sure that it is good food?" And of course they made him leave. They made him leave the temple because they thought that he was crazy. And of course love is crazy. Love is insanity. Right? It doesn't make sense at all. And his point was that he was totally devoted. See, when we are devoted, the idea of you and me goes away, and there's an idea of you. It's like Rumi tells us, it's like the lover that holds the ruby up to the rising sun. The two lovers awake at dawn, and one says to the other, "Who do you love more, me or you?" And the other picks up a ruby and holds it up to the sunlight and says, "Can you tell where the sun ends and the ruby begins? I am like the ruby. There is no me without your light shining through me." It is a total sense of devotion. It is a willingness to die for our beloved, because there is no death, and there is no reason to live without the beloved in our hearts. So love then starts to take on a totally different way of being. It's a different dimension in which we exist. It's beyond the intellect, it's beyond the ego, and it's beyond the ordinary idea of love, and we are transformed. And that love, that divine love, that incredible divine love, is what then transforms our consciousness and helps us to move forward in our spiritual growth. Now, as I said at the beginning, I think for many of us, this concept of motherhood, the ideal of motherhood, represents that devotion to us. What is there for a child that the mother would not do, that the mother would not give? Can you see the mother taking her newborn child as the first time it's handed to her, and adoring this little creature? Loving this little creature, loving everything about this little creature. The tiny little fingers and the toes and the little nose and the beautiful eyes and the hair on the head and everything about it. This is total unconditional love of God in action in our lives. And it represents to us the total unconditional love that God has for us. And it represents to us the total unconditional love that we are. When we move beyond ideas of the body and birth and death, and we move into the acceptance of unconditional love. So I invite you this week, consider what is it? Who is it? What is it? It doesn't have to be a living person. It doesn't have to even be a real person. It could be a religious symbol. What is it? What is it in your consciousness that represents unconditional love to you? What is it in your consciousness that you would be willing to be devoted to lose all sense of yourself, to lose all sense of the ego I, to lose all sense of the intellect, and just be love? Not do love, not think love, but be love. When we learn to be in touch with the presence that is already within us, that unconditional love comes forward as a natural state of being. We don't even have to think, "Oh my God, I love you." We just are love. This is why people who are deeply in love can sit in the same room with each other for hours and never say a word. See, it's the embarrassed intellect that feels that it needs to chatter. But when the two hearts feel each other, there's no need for language. I have Sade's "This Is No Ordinary Love" playing in the back of my head, see? But if you listen to the lyric of that is also a very needy song. But just think, this is no ordinary love we're talking about. This is divine love. You are God's instrument of divine love. There is somebody in your life who is God's instrument of divine love for you. Open your heart. Open your experience. Be the love that you came here to be. And so it is.